So this is week 43 of the Wellness Wednesday series, and today we're honoring International Mindfulness Day. What we do within the Wellness Wednesdays is we go through this progress. We go through the progress of what is our foundation, what's our obstacle to practicing what it is that will be helpful to us, and then how can we turn this into a skill. So we're going to go on to the breakout rooms, and Will, if you could manage the breakout rooms. The idea is, how can we learn from one another? How can we share this information and come away with a sense of peace, a sense of security, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, whatever it is that's of value to you that will bring you strength or resilience or positivity, and practice that. It doesn't mean that we're good at it right away. So if we're facing a challenging situation, especially if somebody has violated what we consider to be a value, right? An unbendable fact, a truth. If they violate that, that causes great distress, and it'll put us in emotional response. But if we can tap into something that brings us positivity or some skill that we can practice that will make us stronger, then we will be more resilient. We'll be able to come back to a place of positivity much quicker. So today we're talking about mindfulness, and I'd just like to ask everyone, we'll just go around the room. What would you like to get out of today? What's your experience with mindfulness? And I'll start with you, Marie.
Well, I just want to start out by saying that mindfulness was always a trigger for me. And it's because I understood it to be just purely with the mind. And I so wanted to disconnect from what my mind was always saying and connect to my body. And I realized that that's not the true meaning. So again, learning more about what mindfulness means, not only to me, to others around me, and gaining a better understanding.
I love that. And so, Jan, what would you like to get out of today?
I always come to learn and be surrounded by, great people, far wiser than me most of the time. I love mindfulness. To me, I think of mindfulness as being present, true presence, and not necessarily, for me, it's not interpreting even what's in the mind. It's just letting it be. It's just having it be present and disconnecting from it in some ways. Coming from someone who tends to analyze everything is just kind of to distance myself from it and give it space.
That's wonderful. And it's actually triggering within myself this connection to the word presence. All of a sudden it jumps back to this little inner child that's thinking of Christmas and presents.
Exactly.
So Paul, what would you like to get out of today?
I think it's just, mindfulness is a great topic, and just to hear what everybody has to say, because it's like, ironically, coming here is about being in a place without judgment, and it's a big part of what mindfulness is about. So for me, just like Maureen said, just hear what everybody else has to say and what wisdom they have to share. And yeah, that's me.
I love that. And I'd like to welcome iPhone John. Ken, what would you like to get out of today?
I don't have an expectation. As my teacher would say, won't it be interesting to see? So it's just open curiosity, and and there will be gems, scattered throughout, I'm sure. So
Philip, what would you like to get out of today? What would be helpful?
You know what? It's about paying attention to what's going on right now and process it rather than just think it's all about me.
Thank you for that. And that's that connection with those around us and noticing what's helpful.
Yes.
And we're going to jump into some breakout rooms and discuss these ideas a little bit further. And Carrie, what would you like to get out of today?
I don't know. It's my first time here, and I'm going through a lot of stuff today. So
You're in the right place. So this will offer a little bit of connection, and we will go into the breakout rooms to have a little bit of discussion. what we try to focus on this is kind of step away from the problems for a little bit. And it's this idea of having a space of education, a space of shared learning, because every one of us goes through life and we have this unique, beautiful experience of of having gone through some things. And a lot of us have gone through some difficulty. And so I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through. That's when you're going through the suffering, it's quite a challenge. And so we want to just kind of pour some love and positivity into you in this moment. And what the hope is that if we can shift away from that for just a moment, that we can connect to something that might be more helpful. The question that we're going to be discussing for the rest of you is the basis of your mindfulness. So when you're a child, you're in this present moment, you're in the here and now. But then all of a sudden, you learn to forget that, and you learn to either be worried about the things that went wrong in the past, or you start worrying about what might happen in the future. So it's this idea of what was the basis? When did you shift from being in the here and now to being someplace else in your mind?
Okay. I'm leaving Ken in the main room with you, Stephen, and I'll join Maureen. I'll bring you back in 10 minutes.
What was your journey of mindfulness, Ken?
Actually, I was kind of lucky because I started pretty early. Figure I found the martial arts when I was in my early 20s. So, and that was really that, like, I mean, that was a guiding force in really stepping into that world. And it's kind of interesting. You talk about, and I'm sure for everyone, there's a lot of circumstances in childhood that, kind of frame the experience as you move into adulthood. And often you're not the tools aren't brought to your attention, and you don't know what you don't know. So like I had my dad abandoned us when I was very, very young, so grew up with a lot of that. So you talk about anxiety over the future. Is someone else going to leave me? And then the sadness over the past. Why did he leave me? So a lot of that frames. And then in high school, I had my best friend took his own life. So those kind of things, like they they create some interesting kind of I don't know, puzzles for your growing and maturing mind to gnaw at, So, and I was
There,
lucky that I was an avid reader, and my mom had recommended I read Shogun, and which I don't know if you ever read it. They just made it into a series, but it's basically about an Englishman who ends up in Japan and gets immersed in that culture, and that kind of set me on a path of looking at like Eastern philosophy mainly. It wasn't even about martial arts at that point. It was just how it was very different, the way that they moved through the world, the way that they, kind of expressed themselves culturally. And that kind of led me into, formally training in, everything from meditation to martial arts and all that kind of stuff. And so,
it's interesting because I was talking to Stuart, and Stuart mentioned the red cloak tea. And so I guess it's a famous tea that there was a nobleman going through China, and they were like the bureaucrats, and they wore these red cloaks, and fell sick, and so this farmer brought him into his home, and he gave him some local tea remedy that they would use for people that were not feeling well, and the guy recovered, and so he nurtured this government official back to health, and the government official gave him the red cloak, which is a high symbol of significance to this
mm,
farmer, and elevated his standing. And he started calling the tea red cloak tea, and so it was just this story that Stuart had about going through that. And my I was never really emotionally aware of too much when I was younger. I wish I would have found martial arts. I tried it. I was a little bit, I was in judo, but I we didn't have the teacher that was really focused. I was more worried about trying to keep from getting beat up
yeah,
than than get
very
anything else.
common. Yeah, no, you're right. It does have, it's the right teacher has to have the right approach or it's not going to be the right experience. Yeah.
Right, because it wasn't, the problem was is that the ones that were beating me up were my brothers, and they were taking it too, and they were bigger and stronger. So, I know that it's supposed to be the the skill and not the weight, but a little weight is always helpful.
Well, especially at the beginning, and all things being equal, size matters when when the skill is equivalent. So you have to have
Yeah.
you have to cultivate a much higher level of skill to counteract natural physical advantages.
So, and I'll jump into the real conversation here in a minute, but there's something that you're talking about, which is the mindset, the mindfulness, the moment that I was tired of being chased and bullied by my brother, and he didn't bully me too bad, but he would make this game where he would chase me around, and when he'd catch me, he'd tickle me or something. I hated it,
Mm.
and one day I was tired. I was on the swim team. I had been, long workouts, morning and night, and it's like I'd been doing this for months. I lived on, grew up on a farm, so we did a lot of manual labor. My dad was in construction, so we did a lot of manual labor there. And I didn't realize it, but I'd started developing, my musculature, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden I decided he chased me out the front door. The door goes flying open. I'm out first. He's out behind me. And I just, in my mind, I said, you know what? I'm just too tired to run today. And and I knew that I was going to just be pummeled and beat to a pulp, but I didn't care anymore. I was going to lay as many strikes into him as I could, and I was going to make it cost him. And I just turned around, squared up, and I faced him. And I was surprised because all of a sudden I was not playing by the rules anymore, and he just stopped dead in his track. And the look on his face was priceless. Like, this isn't fun. And he turned around and he
Yeah.
walked back in the house. And it's like, and he never chased me again. And I realized that it was something about the energy, something about the confidence that
Mhm.
I somehow or other communicated exactly what I was thinking, which was, it's gonna, you can bring it on, but it's gonna cost you. And
Yeah.
and I'm willing to
Yeah.
pay that. I'm willing to pay the price, but you are too. And that changed the dynamic of everything. And it kind of goes into what we learned. So like the boundaries that we learned, like with mindfulness, I just I just had to decide I didn't want to think about the past anymore. I didn't want to think about the things that were wrong or the things that caused. I I started becoming acutely aware of what I placed my attention on caused
Mhm.
an emotional response within my body, which caused a feeling that I could feel. And then I decided whether I liked that feeling or not. And if I didn't like the feeling, I just didn't think about those things. I don't watch the news. I don't watch scary
Mhm.
movies because I don't like the feeling that I get when I watch them.
Yeah.
And I guess there's one little thing that goes with that is, my cat's only 7 pounds. She's tiny, but she runs the neighborhood. She's like, tail's always straight up, super confident. And she's like this little boss cat. Even the neighbor's dog is afraid of her because one time it chased her and it did the same thing I did. It stood its ground and it left a claw in the dog's nose. And even the neighbors, oh, even the dog's owners are like, oh, you got a mean cat, but she's super loving. And my thought is, but you've got a 60-pound dog that went after her. Like, who's the bully here? Who's
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Right? It's just
Yeah.
just because she stood her ground, you can't fault her.
Well, and isn't that an interesting thing when you talk about this whole conversation? So, especially in your formative years, so here's the cat that stands up for itself, but the interpretation from the outside is a judgment on that cat, and so, and how many times does that happen, where we do try to figure these things out, and then some outside source, especially if it's if we're impressionable to that because of the position they hold, that influences us away from cultivating that skill that could serve us, because it's easy to get pushed from those outside things, especially when we're young.
You're absolutely right. I had a coaching session today, and my client was more on that agreeable need, scale because you've got those
Yeah.
5 traits, ocean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, how emotional you are. And so she's high on that agreeable scale. And it's like I asked her, I was like, would you mind doing like a testimonial for me? And then all of a sudden I realized that, well, it really wasn't the appropriate timing to ask because she had just kind of gone through a session where there's some emotional content. And then I said, I want you to say no to me. Even if
That's awesome.
even even if you want to say yes, because I think it's important that you just, even if you want to say yes, I think it's important for you to, and I go, do whatever you want. But it's like, if you've got just the slightest resistance, say no, because I think that this is an important lesson. And it made me happy. It made me really pleased that she found that strength.
Yeah. Well, and isn't that an interesting thing? Because without you basically stepping into the role of teacher to create that opportunity for her, she would have just continued saying yes, and and just being in that ingredable mindset. So often it's like these moments when someone arrives or something arrives that informs us and gives us that option that we didn't previously know that we had. It's such an interesting thing.
Well, it's also powerful because I was in that space of being curious, and so it didn't matter to me whether she did this or not. I would like to have had
Right.
it, but I quit making it about me and I made it about what what am I sensing in this moment, right? I'm erasing my
Yeah,
attachment,
yeah,
my boundaries, and I noticed a little bit of a reservation. I noticed a little bit of it's just kind of a feeling on my end of, okay, she seems to be a little bit uncomfortable. And when
yeah.
I acknowledge that, it opens up a dialogue to something even more powerful.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think that, in the end, one of the most interesting things about the mindfulness conversation is you need to have a space where there's enough skill to cultivate skill. And there's got to be that relinquishing of some kind of motive or objective, and just purely just be in that place of curiosity that you're talking about. And it's interesting. I can remember, so I grew up, so my stepdad, who's a wonderful man, he was a, old world Sicilian, so there's a lot of judgment there. So over time, you develop a flinch that you're going to do things wrong and be punished for it, but then you carry that forwards. But then my mentor, there was nothing you could say to him where he wouldn't smile, find it interesting, no judgment, and then you go to work, you know? So, but if you don't ever find those teachers, if you just attract people who reinforce, those patterns that you've already been in, now, you end up stuck. It can be very difficult to break out of that. So, yeah, we need more people that are skillful.
Well, it's people that are secure, because when
Yeah,
people are in
oh,
their space of
absolutely.
security, it changes the dynamic because there's no longer a defense mechanism. There's no longer a need to be significant. If you're secure in who you are, then you're actually vulnerable. You're open. You can step into that role of teacher without fear of your student surpassing you, or without fear of not knowing the answer. So I think that's wonderful.
The skillful surfer is not afraid of the wave.
So how was that? So, Philip, you've been in what, one other of these or two?
Oh, yes.
Okay. It's if anyone has anything to share that was like an epiphany, if not, we'll go to the second question, which is, anybody raise a hand? Okay. So the second question that we're going to go to is this idea of what what's an obstacle to us practicing mindfulness, right? What is an obstacle that keeps us from achieving this, this state of being right here, right now, whether it be a clear mind or a clear heart? What is the obstacle? And if you can kind of get into a situation where you can think of the obstacle, well, what would it be like if you could liken it to something else? Is it a big obstacle? Is it a wall? Is it a small little ditch? Is it something that is easy to pass, or is it something that's hard to pass? And then kind of think about, okay, if you could get past that, what would it be like? What would it be like to be fully mindful? So that's the question, is what's the obstacle? How do you get past it? And what would it be like?
That was very kind of you, Stephen.
Oh, thank you.
The question, Stephen. Go
Mhm.
ahead. What obstacles do you see to mindfulness, I guess, or being present?
The biggest obstacle is our thoughts. And I'm fortunate that with my with the experience that I had in life, I was able to quiet that negative self-talk and also to quiet, to accept and quiet those emotions. So it's not nearly, it's much easier for me now to be in a space of mindfulness because I don't I don't have this critical voice going off in the back of my head telling me that, I need to do this, I need to do that, I'm going to fail at this, and it's like in the old times that was incessant. It was the thoughts that I had that were negative, um, were horrible. But what was strange though is also I picked up this habit of self-deprecating speech, right? So I'd always minimize myself or put myself down. And what we find later on is that has meaning. It pulls your energy down. It's like, and other people, they're going to treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. So there's so much that goes into that. And what I realized is once you just accept that you are who you are on this journey of life, and we're all students, we're all unknowing until we know. It changes everything because you quit trying to be significant, and it's almost as though you fall into the sense of significance because
Mm,
you're alive, right? We've got this life, and if you can recognize that everyone in this world would pay every penny they had to continue to live, if it had to be related to a cost or a choice, then we're living a priceless life, right? We are living something of immense value. So I I think what happens for myself is sometimes I just get distracted, right? I focus on the wrong things. I get too busy about stuff that doesn't matter. And the biggest difficulty I have for being mindful is being busy. So that would be my answer. How, how about for either of you?
Well, I did love what you said, Stephen, and one of the things I love the fact that when you just realize you're like a student of life and it's almost like you're not pressured anymore to quote unquote be perfect. You kind of lean back and say, okay, well, I'm just, I'm perfect in life kind of thing. Which I love. I'm not, I think I'm probably much more where I do have those doubts and that self-talk, but I've gotten really good at kind of just switching my brain in an instant to where I don't focus on that, where I shift my mind, like I automatically, I'll be having negative thoughts and I'll just automatically go to my breath and say, just focus on your breath to get me out of that kind of mode and be more present, or I get truly present in what I'm doing. Like, I think you use the example, which I use a lot, is like washing the dishes, like just being present in the action. And so I almost think it's gotten to the point where it's almost like reflex to me. I'll like catch myself and I'll be like, no, like shift. And and it takes, I think what's so interesting to me now is like when I look at it, it takes me like barely no time to shift out of it. Where I think I used to spend a lot of time in that space. Now it's kind of like, nope, not going there. So I think that that's what I notice the most when I'm really busy. I don't need to feel anything because I just kind of focus on my to-do list. And that's kind of like a default behavior for me. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to find ways to be busy because I don't really want to think about what I'm feeling right now. And so for me, it's not busyness, it's almost lack of busyness that kind of forces the self-talk to come up. It's like, I'm so used to being busy that when I'm not busy, it's almost scary because I don't want to like think about some of the stuff I would go to. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And in our little personal chat, the WhatsApp chat, Bernard was talking about victim mindset, and I just was joking, and I was a day that I had lot of stuff going on. I said, we don't have time to be a victim.
That's right.
we, we've got a world to change, right? It's like it's this idea of, we got stuff to do, right? It's like and we can change the world. We change it one perception at a time. And so it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you're talking to the person, at the yoga studio, or you're talking to somebody at the grocery store. Um, if somebody that is not having a good experience, maybe there's something simple and I think that would help them. And I think the biggest thing that we can help them with is just our energy, our presence. If we can be at that space of peace and calm and acceptance, it changes everything. Will,
Yeah,
how
please,
about
Will, hear from you.
Mm.
what's your experience
Um,
like?
I think the inner critic, that little inner critic or that inner voice is when I think a bit like Jan, not busy, not something to focus on, not being productive. When I'm sort of, I'm not going to use the word bored, but when I'm not um, moving towards something or being keeping my mind in the present. And it's, that's when it comes up, and that's when all the, its little negative voice undoes all the good things that you progress to do for yourself, and the good minds, the mindset that you put yourself in, it just likes to unravel it. And it's wicked little game. I
So,
my little inner critic looks like a leprechaun.
so if you could get past that obstacle, I mean, is it what would mindfulness be like for you? Have you experienced that before? What's it like when you reach that space?
Yes, I have. I've been in that space, but I think to be in that space for me, I need to be away from all other sensory interruptions, and be sort of completely out in nature.
So
And I can quiet the critic, I can quiet everything, and just sit and be.
so what does it feel like? What is that experience like for you?
It's euphoric. It's euphoric, especially if you're sitting on the ground, and you're grounding yourself or earthing yourself at the same time. It is euphoric.
I want you
That's probably the best way to describe it.
I was just wondering if, because sometimes we get caught up thinking about the difficulty of the problem, but it's like if you could actually think about that euphoria, it's like the problems would melt away. It's like it doesn't really matter that it's difficult. You could get to that state if
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
That's lovely.
and yeah, when it's not so cold here, and I am having that difficulty of mind state, I just go out and find a bit of earth and sit on it and touch it and just bring back that feeling and just let it all just drift away. But yeah, it's
What I found interesting is by imagining that, by by revisiting that memory in your mind, you can actually have that experience again. Just make it clear in your mind,
mm,
just just imagine go through the steps, the process, right? If you pack the car, pack the car. If you walked up a hill, walk up the hill. Whatever you did, do it again and just retrace your experience. And
mm,
then and then live that moment in your mind, making it more real, focusing on what it is that your environment's like, paying attention to every minute detail. And then
no,
also
it's all right.
the what is it that's going on, the actions, and then also how are you feeling in that, right? Just to let that
Mm,
euphoria grow and become real. So how
mm,
about for you, Jan? What
Well, I was thinking for Will, a good way to do it is to create the sense. So for me, if I want to feel like I'm out in nature, if I'm in the woods, I'll diffuse wood oils. So I diffuse scents that recall that experience for me.
mm,
Since smell has so much power for memory for us. So if we want to rekindle that, kind of go to the good, like coniferous, for me, the coniferous trees, like the spruce and the pines and things, the balsams, which like, I'm like, oh, okay, kind
That
of,
is, it is lovely.
yeah.
Mm. For me,
Um,
it'd be it's probably the smell of the earth, the smell of the, and
mhm.
I always, and when I'm doing that, it is true what you said, Stephen. I do tend to always seem to be able to smell the sea air, even though I'm miles away from the sea. I can smell the sea air.
Um,
So
beautiful.
How about for you, Jan? What would that mindful space be like for you?
I think joyful and peace are the words that come. I loved Will's word of euphoria, because I think that's really sums it up. But I would think joyful, because I think at the points of when I am truly like when I teach, I'm truly present. And that is probably one of the times I'm pure joy. Like I am just so happy. Um, it feels right. The other time is at points when I'm creative. Like I was a fine art minor, and when I used to paint, I was in that space. I was like, like a bomb could have gone off around me, and I wouldn't have heard a thing. I was just so present and um, so present in what I was doing. And I think the gift sometimes of doing things with like our hands is it forces us to like kind of ground to be present. That's why I read a really great book once. It was called I think it was called The World of Essential Ingredients. And it was about a woman who ran a cooking school, but she talks about that very experiential thing about like kneading dough, that which is equated to like to me like to building sandcastles. It's like very tactile and really keeps you in the present moment. And I think that that's why kids are so good at it, because they involve all their senses in what they do. But to me, it's pure joy.
It's lovely. And for myself, it's the sense of calm. I mean, really, that's my when I'm mindful, it's just a sense of peace, the sense of security. Um, it's a strength, but the overall feeling is like calm. It's like being deep in the ocean with no with it's almost as though your sensory is quieted and you're just in the space of connectedness. And people like if I feel that, then people have actually told me that they feel calm around me in my just in
Mhm.
my presence. And it's always strange because like a lot of times I'm feeling a little bit, nervous or agitated or something like that. But other people will reflect that back. And it's like it's
Mhm.
interesting. It's interesting that they're sensing that when I don't feel like I'm even in that space myself. But it's wonderful that that's reflected because that's what I'm trying to create. So welcome back, everybody. I hope that was a positive experience. Um, so in our room, we talked about this sense of being in this place of mindfulness. Each one of us, if you would share your word, and then I'll ask Ken and Maureen to share their word as well. But Will, your word for being in that space. It was euphoria. And Jan, what was your word?
Joyful.
So joyful. And my sense of being in that place of mindfulness was a feeling of calm. How about for you, Ken? When you're in that space of mindfulness, what is the overriding feeling?
I think the word that came up as we were in conversation, just balance.
It's the balance. It's lovely. And Maureen, how about for you? If you're in a place of mindfulness, what feeling would that represent for you?
Peace.
Peace. Lovely. So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. I hate to do that because none of us likes homework. We have these emotional attachments to words. The the homework is how can we develop this as a skill? All right. So the idea is how can you get to a sense of peace, Maureen? So it's like the goal is what skill levels can you practice to bring you to the sense of peace right here, right now? And for you, Ken, as you're going through your day, what skills can you practice to bring you to a sense of balance? And Jan, throughout the day, notice and practice those skills, those things that you can get better at, whether it be thought or whether it be a practice, that will bring that sense of joy. And the same for you, Will. Notice what brings you euphoria. And I will do the same. My practice will be, how can I practice calm throughout the day to be calm in this present moment? So we've got about 8 minutes. What did you get out of today, Jan?
I loved what you said before, Stephen. It was about almost not having to try so hard and to be content with being the constant, almost constant student of life without judgment. And so I love that aspect. When I did my yoga teacher training, my teacher said to me, failing yoga is like failing life. And at the time, I didn't get it. I was like, I don't get that. It was very new to me. And I was like, I don't get that. But that's what she said. And what you said reminded me of that that idea of we're always students of life.
It's lovely. I don't get it either. So it looks like I'm open to some coaching.
Take a class. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, so I'll have you instruct me on that. I'm going to switch it to speaker view. And then Ken, what was your takeaway from today?
I think just one of the gateways to mindfulness is meaningful human connection. It's just when the conversation is engaging and you're talking to people that you feel connected to, you just become present. There's no other skill or technique necessary. You're just there. So I was just observing that, moving through the different rooms and talking with especially people that I know and trust. That makes it even easier.
That is quite lovely, that connection. And Maureen, what was your takeaway from today?
Well, when I'm not mindful and I'm dealing with emotions, I have a need to move. Move, walk, put my feet on the grass if we have grass. Right now we have snow. Just move. I just cannot sit still to meditate. And so I just need to move and let my body express what I'm feeling by moving. And today what I heard is that that's okay too.
That's lovely. And thank you for being here. And Will, what was your takeaway from today?
That's a hard. Oh, I think the biggest takeaway is to remember my euphoria. What brings me that feeling of euphoria? To and stay in the present when that is happening, and always remember it to keep the balance and the focus.
Thank you for that. And for myself, my takeaway was it's this idea of recognizing the space that you want to be in this present moment. So for myself, the thing that I appreciate most is this idea of of peace and calm, and connecting to that, or finding what strengthens that within my experience. So welcome back, Carrie and Paul. Carrie, what was your takeaway from today? What was your experience like? I'm going
It
to put you
was
on.
well, I had a good experience with Paul, and it took a little while with his little exercise he did, but I didn't realize that when I get into these moments of kind of getting frazzled or wanting to beat the crap out of myself, that I can go to some of the moments that are in my life that are deep in my brain that were positive and happy moments.
That's amazing. And the more that you practice that skill, the better it is. So many people that are in that moment of suffering, they have a difficulty going to something that's happy or positive. The more you practice the skill, the stronger that will become.
And like he showed me, and I didn't realize because I've just, I get in my car all the time and drive whenever I do get to drive. But he pointed out to me that that's a gift because my car's paid off, and it's an 8-year-old car. It's paid off. That like some other people, I guess, in this world that have a car that they're trying to pay on, and I've seen that other people are struggling too. So, and the fact that I have some gifts that were given to me, like the car being paid off in the house, and of course I'm working on trying to sell it, but I kind of slid off into some negativity and wanting to thought things were going downhill when they it was only a choice that was going downhill.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your strength and your vulnerability to show up as you are. And that's one of the strengths of this community is that there is no judgment, and we're all going through this life, and we all go through some difficult moments. So thank you for just sharing how you truly are and not trying to pretend like you're something different. So
Yeah.
that's to be honored. And Paul, thank you for stepping up and stepping in. What was your takeaway from today?
Well, just, there's no moment that you have to be more mindful and present than when you got somebody talking to you about stuff that are difficult for them. And, Carrie, thank you. It was just like, that moment just forces you to focus and, be completely present. So, yeah, it did what it says on the box. It was Mindfulness Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kerry. Appreciate you.
So thank you all so much. Next week, week 44, is going to be Finding Tranquility Within. It's talking about meditation, exploring that. And so I'm going to ask one of you, and it might be Jan. She always does that, but we also may switch it up because I think Paul does some meditations as well. So we're going to look for a volunteer next week, and you can message me if that's something that resonates with you. We're going to start off this session with some meditation. So how can we quiet the busyness of life and enter into this space of meditation? And then again, we're gonna talk about this as a skill set that we can develop and we can grow within ourselves. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. And you make my Wednesdays better. You make my week better.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.